The Grand Hall of the Thazari Empire was a place of luxury and power, filled with glistening columns and high ceilings that echoed with the whispers of royalty. Tonight it held a wedding, one that was meant to be celebrated, but was far from joyous. Princess Shalvera, the only daughter of the mighty emperor, stood at the center, a prisoner in her own family's palace. She wore chains made of light, not as a symbol of honor, but as a mark of her father's shameful bargain. The emperor, desperate to settle an age-old debt that had stained their name for centuries, had traded his daughter to an alien warlord of the Krixa brood. Shalvera had no choice in the matter. Her life, her future, her heart, were now the property of the fearsome Krixa warlord, Krogar the Bloodthirsty, a creature known for his brutal conquests and blood-soaked reputation. She had been sold, and the moment her father had signed the treaty, she became a pawn in a game of intergalactic politics, her emotions irrelevant to those around her. As she stood at the altar, her eyes filled with tears, the overwhelming weight of her fate crushed her spirit. This was not love. This was a cruel transaction, an exchange of power, not of hearts. The people watching, the alien nobles from across the galaxy, looked on with cold indifference. They were here to witness the union of two empires, not the union of two souls. Shalvera could barely breathe as she stared at the man she was to marry, his cruel gaze boring into her as if he could already taste the victory. Krogar's smile was twisted, filled with the promise of domination, and she couldn't escape it. He had won. He always won. Her mind raced with thoughts of escape, but there was nowhere to run. The guards surrounding her were loyal to her father, and the Krixa were known for their iron grip on anyone who dared resist. She could feel her freedom slipping away with every passing second. The chains around her wrists were a symbol of her loss, the loss of choice, the loss of control, and most of all, the loss of hope. The sound of the wedding drums echoed in her mind like a death march. But then, without warning, the sky above the palace cracked open with the sound of an explosion. The ground shook as a massive, sleek black ship tore through the clouds, its engines roaring like a beast on a hunt. The entire room froze. The guards raised their weapons, the nobles screamed in panic, and Shalvera's heart skipped a beat. The ship wasn't like anything she had ever seen. It was human-made, sleek and sharp, like a predator in the night. It hovered above the palace, casting a shadow over the entire gathering. For a moment, everything went still. A voice echoed through the hall, deep and commanding. "You traded her like a coin. Now we're cashing in." The words rang through the air like a thunderclap. Shalvera's mind struggled to comprehend what was happening. A human ship had come to her rescue? It didn't make sense. Humans were not welcome here. They were weak, insignificant, or so the galaxy had been led to believe. But as the voice boomed again, Shalvera saw the truth. Someone had come for her. The door to the hall burst open, and a figure stepped through. He was a man, tall, wearing a tattered flight jacket and battered armor, with a face that had seen too many battles. His name was Reyes Maddox, a human captain. He was not here for the ceremony, but for her freedom. Without a word, he drew a glowing blade from his side and advanced toward the altar. His eyes locked on hers. The room was in chaos as the Thazari guards rushed forward to stop him. But Reyes didn't hesitate. With a single swipe of his blade, he cut down the nearest guard. Shalvera gasped, her eyes wide with shock and fear. But something inside her stirred. A glimmer of hope. The battle in the hall intensified as Reyes fought, moving with the precision of someone who had fought many wars. The Krixa warlord Krogar roared in fury, but Reyes barely flinched, his gaze steady, focused only on Shalvera. He moved with purpose, cutting down enemies, And in that moment, she realized something that she had never believed possible. This human, this stranger, was willing to die for her. In that instant, the tears that had filled her eyes stopped. Shalvera looked at him, her heart pounding in her chest. This was not the fate her father had promised. This was a chance, an opportunity to escape, to break free. She reached for Ray's outstretched hand. The chains that had held her prisoner for so long were nothing now. Ray's Maddox didn't waste a single second. As soon as the doors to the palace burst open and the chaos of battle filled the air, his focus never wavered. His mission was clear: get to the princess, break her chains, and get out alive. Ray's wasn't here for glory or recognition. He was here to fulfill a promise. A promise made to a woman long gone, but whose memory had shaped the man standing before the Thazari elite. His eyes were cold, but not out of cruelty, out of determination. Every movement he made, every strike of his plasma blade, was precise, practiced, and deadly. He knew the odds. The Thazari guards were skilled, and the Krixa warlord Krogar, the one who had claimed Shalvera as his own, was a terrifying force in his own right. But Ray's had never cared about odds. He cared about the mission. He cared about keeping his word. The princess stood frozen in place, her heart racing as the human warrior fought through waves of enemies to reach her. Her world had been turned upside down in moments. What she had believed to be her destiny was now being challenged by this lone human soldier. The fear that had gripped her heart when she was handed over like a piece of property began to fade, replaced by something else. Hope. She couldn't explain it. She couldn't understand why he was here for her. But she saw something in his eyes. A fire. A promise. She wasn't alone anymore. She could feel the power in his presence. The strength in every slash of his blade. It was like nothing she had ever seen, certainly nothing she had ever been taught to expect from humans. As Ray's cut his way through the palace, slicing through Thazari soldiers and alien guards with ruthless efficiency, Shalvera's thoughts raced. She had been trained to believe that humans were weak, that they were beneath the superior races of the galaxy. But this man, this human, was showing her the true meaning of strength. Not brute force, not fear, but resolve. He was fighting for her when no one else would, when everyone else had seen her as nothing more than a pawn to be traded. The realization hit her like a bolt of lightning. This wasn't just a rescue, it was a revolution, a symbol of defiance. Ray's reached her just as another group of guards moved in. He didn't hesitate. He cut the chains around her wrists with a single swipe of his blade, freeing her from the oppressive hold that had bound her for so long. His eyes met hers, full of quiet assurance. "You're safe now," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Shalvera could hardly believe it. The chains that had been a symbol of her imprisonment now lay broken on the floor. A mere memory. She was free. Not only from her father's debt, but from the weight of her own helplessness. For the first time in what felt like forever, Shalvera allowed herself to believe in a different future. But there was no time to dwell on the freedom she had gained. The palace was falling apart, and the Krixa warlord wasn't about to let his prize go without a fight. Krogar's voice echoed through the hall, furious, filled with threats. "You'll pay for this, human! No one defies the Krixa!" He roared, his massive form looming in the doorway, his sharp, scaled features twisted in rage. Ray's didn't flinch. Instead, he motioned for Shalvera to follow him. "This isn't over, but it's far from the end," he said as the two of them dashed toward the exit, the sounds of combat still raging behind them. They reached the palace's outer gates, where the Black Star, Ray's ship, waited. The sleek black warship gleamed under the burning sky as Ray's signaled for the doors to open. His elite team of warriors, the Iron Ghosts, were already on board. prepared for the next phase of the escape. Shalvera couldn't believe what she was seeing. These humans weren't just fighters. They were an unstoppable force, a force of will and grit. As Reyes helped her into the ship, he gave her one last look, his face hard, but his eyes gentle. "It's not over yet, Princess. You're not safe until we're off this planet." Before Shalvera could respond, the ship's engines roared to life, lifting off the ground with blinding speed. The palace behind them erupted in a storm of fire and destruction as the Krixa forces closed in. But Reyes and his crew weren't going to stop. They couldn't. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for something greater, a new future. And as the Black Star ascended into the stars, Shalvera realized something profound. Her life had just been irrevocably changed. She wasn't the victim of a debt. She wasn't a prize to be won. She was a fighter, and with these humans, she would rise again. As the Black Star cut through the atmosphere, Shalvera sat in the cockpit, her hands gripping the seat as she watched the planet below disappear. Her mind was still reeling from everything that had happened, everything that had changed in such a short time. The man, Reyes Maddox, had come out of nowhere, fighting against impossible odds to free her. She had expected to be a prisoner for the rest of her life, but now she was free, flying through the stars with a human she barely knew. The thought of it seemed surreal, as if she had stepped into another life altogether. She had heard stories of human resilience, of their will to survive, but seeing it firsthand was something entirely different. The humans, led by Reyes, weren't just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for something bigger, something that Shalvera hadn't truly understood until now: freedom. It wasn't just a political battle. It wasn't just about winning or losing. It was about taking control of your destiny, no matter what the cost. As the Black Star ascended into the cold, empty void of space, Shalvera found herself asking the same question over and over. Why did Reyes come for me? He didn't owe her anything. He didn't know her, and yet he risked everything to save her. It wasn't just a rescue. He had fought through an entire army, faced down a brutal warlord, and sacrificed his safety, all to save her. It didn't make sense. Why would anyone, especially a human, do something like that for her? She had been a pawn, a bargaining chip in a galactic game of power, but now she was free, and she was beginning to see the true meaning of strength. In the darkened halls of the Black Star, Reyes and his crew moved with purpose. The Iron Ghosts were a team like no other, veterans of countless battles, survivors of wars that had shaped them into something unbreakable. They were efficient, focused, and above all, united. Reyes was their leader, not because of his title, but because of the respect he had earned through his actions. He wasn't just a soldier. He was a symbol of everything humanity had to offer: courage, determination, and the ability to fight for what was right. As Shalvera watched the crew prepare for their next move, she couldn't help but admire them. They didn't just fight. They believed in something, and now they had brought her into that belief. Reyes, ever focused on the mission, approached her as the ship stabilized in space. He studied her for a moment, his dark eyes calculating, yet understanding. "We've got a lot of ground to cover," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "But you're not alone anymore. We'll get you to safety." Shalvera opened her mouth to respond, but the words caught in her throat. What could she say? How could she possibly express the overwhelming gratitude, the confusion, the awe she felt for this man? She had been taught all her life to see humans as weak, insignificant, and now here they were, defying everything she knew. It was almost impossible to comprehend, but something inside her stirred, something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. As the Black Star flew deeper into the unknown reaches of space, Reyes and his crew set their sights on their next destination, an old human colony on the fringes of the galaxy. The colony, a hidden haven for those who had escaped the wrath of the galactic empires, was their safe house, a place where Shalvera could recover and regroup. But as the ship entered the cold expanse of space, a sense of danger hung in the air. They weren't out of the woods yet. Krogar, the Krixa warlord, would not let them go without a fight. Word of the escape would have already reached him, and he would be hunting them down with every resource at his disposal. Reyes gathered his team in the ship's war room, preparing for the next phase of their mission. Shalvera, still overwhelmed by everything, quietly sat in the corner, watching the humans as they worked. The crew moved with a sense of urgency, checking weapons, scanning data, and preparing for whatever came next. They were ready for battle. And Shalvera, for the first time in her life, realized that she was ready too. She had been a prisoner of her own circumstances for so long, but now, with Reyes and his crew, she had a chance to fight back, to take control of her own future. The tension in the room was palpable as Reyes looked at each of his crew members. "We can't outrun them," he said, his voice hard. "But we can outfight them. We've done it before, and we'll do it again. We've got one shot at this, and we're not going down without a fight." The crew nodded, their expressions determined. Shalvera felt a fire stir inside her as she stood up, her heart pounding with newfound courage. This was it. This was her chance to change everything, to take a stand for the future she wanted. She wasn't going to hide anymore. She wasn't going to be a pawn. She was going to fight. And with that, the Black Star hurtled toward the unknown, its crew ready to face whatever danger awaited them. But Shalvera knew one thing for sure. The fight was just beginning, and she would be right there beside them. The Black Star was speeding through the stars, its engines roaring as it navigated through asteroid fields and the emptiness of deep space. The tension inside the ship was palpable. Every crew member knew the stakes. They weren't just running from danger anymore. They were running straight into it. Krogar and his Krixa warlords were relentless, and the word of Shalvera's escape would be all over the galaxy by now. Reyes and his crew weren't just outlaws anymore. They were symbols of defiance against a galaxy that believed they should bow to the powerful and the ruthless. The tension in the air only grew heavier as they approached the hidden colony, a place that could offer some safety, but would also put them squarely in the crosshairs of every bounty hunter and warlord looking to collect a price for their heads. Reyes was at the helm, his face a mask of concentration, as he guided the ship through dangerous space lanes. The Iron Ghosts, his elite team of soldiers, were on high alert. They moved in perfect synchrony, checking weapons and equipment, running drills, and preparing for what was sure to come. The human team was unified in purpose: protect the princess, fight for freedom, and above all, survive. There was no doubt in their minds. This was the beginning of something far bigger than any of them had anticipated. Shalvera, sitting in the corner of the ship, couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into a new world, one filled with unimaginable dangers, but also filled with hope. Something she had long ago thought was out of reach. She had seen the strength of the humans, their determination to fight, and for the first time in her life, she felt she had a purpose. Reyes approached Shalvera during the quiet moments of the journey. His presence was steady and reassuring, and his calmness had a grounding effect on her. He had led armies, fought countless battles, and faced down some of the galaxy's most dangerous threats. But with her, there was something softer, something protective in his eyes. "You okay?" he asked simply, his voice low but caring. It was a question that wasn't just about her physical safety. It was about her heart, her mind, her fears. Shalvera hesitated for a moment, then nodded, her throat tight. She was free, but the weight of what was coming hung over her like a dark cloud. "I'm not sure what to feel," she admitted, looking out the window at the stars. "I was supposed to be someone's possession, someone's tool. Now I don't know who I am anymore." Ray's gaze softened, and he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're not anyone's tool. You're a fighter now. You fight for what's right, for what you believe in. And you're not doing it alone." That moment of quiet reassurance was shattered when the ship's sensors began to flash red. "Incoming!" shouted one of the crew members. Ray's eyes snapped to the monitor. A Krixa warship was fast approaching, its sleek, deadly form cutting through the darkness of space. Shalvera's heart skipped a beat. She had been preparing herself for this moment, but seeing the warship so close made it real. Krogar wasn't going to let them escape without a fight. Ray's immediately took charge. "Iron Ghosts, get to your stations. We're not running. We're fighting." His voice was full of authority, the same voice that had led countless successful missions in the past. But this time, something was different. This wasn't just another battle. This was personal. The ship was immediately thrown into chaos as Ray's crew began to prepare for the incoming assault. The Black Star's weapon systems came online, and the crew scrambled into action, each taking their position. Shalvera, though still shaken, found herself standing up, drawn into the action. The Black Star wasn't just a ship. It was a weapon, and she could feel the power surging through its systems. The fight was about to begin, and she wasn't going to sit idly by. The battle began with a deafening roar as the Krixa warship opened fire. Lasers and missiles erupted from the enemy ship, striking the Black Star's shields with violent force. The ship rocked, but the shields held, crackling with energy. Ray's hands moved with expert precision, steering the Black Star through a series of evasive maneuvers. "Hold on!" he shouted as the ship barrel-rolled to avoid another barrage of fire. Shalvera's heart was pounding, but she stood firm. This was the first time she had ever felt so alive. She had been a prisoner of fate, but now she was in control of her future. She could see Ray's focus, the way he led the crew with unwavering determination, and she knew then that he wasn't just a warrior. He was a symbol of everything she had been taught to fear. But now she realized, fear was no longer a tool to control her. It was something to overcome. The fight grew more intense as the Krixa warship closed in, its weapons blazing with deadly precision. But the Black Star was no ordinary ship. It was fast, maneuverable, and equipped with advanced weaponry. Ray's crew wasn't just surviving. They were fighting back with everything they had. Shalvera watched in awe as the human crew executed coordinated strikes, taking down enemy fighters, and striking at the heart of the Krixa warship with brutal efficiency. Every shot was deliberate, every movement purposeful. The Iron Ghosts were the most dangerous force in the galaxy, and they had just found their match in the Krixa warlords. Shalvera's heart raced as the battle raged on, but she knew one thing for sure: this was only the beginning. The galaxy had underestimated humanity before, and now, as they fought back with everything they had, the message was clear. Humans would not be silenced. They would not bow. They would fight, and they would win. The Black Star was a blur in the cold void of space, the hum of its engines a constant background noise to the chaos unfolding around it. Ray's and his crew had only moments to breathe after their first victory against the Krixa warship. The fight was far from over, but the crew had a moment to regroup and catch their breath. Shalvera stood by a window, watching the stars rush past, her mind still processing the battle that had just occurred. It had been intense, more intense than anything she had ever experienced before. But despite the danger, despite the overwhelming odds, she had never felt more alive. The human crew, led by Ray's, was something extraordinary. They fought with a purpose, with a unity that went beyond survival. They fought for something bigger. And now, Shalvira was part of it. As the adrenaline began to wear off, the reality of their situation hit home. The Krixa were relentless. They would not stop until they had her back. The word of her escape had already spread across the galaxy, and soon, every bounty hunter and warlord would be hunting them down. Reyes knew this, and he was already making plans for the next phase of their escape. They couldn't stay on the run forever. They needed a place to hide, a place where they could regroup, plan, and strike back. The hidden colony they were heading for was their best bet, but it wasn't without its risks. The Krixa knew of its existence, and it wouldn't be long before they sent more forces to lay siege to it. Reyes wasn't about to let that happen. He had a plan, a bold one, as always, but it would require every ounce of the crew's skill and determination. In the heart of the Black Star, the Iron Ghosts were preparing for what was coming. The ship's war room was filled with maps, intelligence reports, and weapons. Each member of the crew was focused, their eyes sharp with the kind of resolve that only comes from knowing what's at stake. Reyes stood at the center, his hand resting on the table as he looked over the plans. "We can't afford to make mistakes," he said, his voice steady but full of purpose. "The Krixa will come after us, and they won't stop until they've wiped us out. But we won't let that happen. We fight back. We take the fight to them." His words were a call to action. The crew, knowing the odds were stacked against them, nodded in agreement. There was no turning back now. They were all in, and they would give everything to make sure Shalvira was safe, and that humanity's future wasn't crushed under the weight of fear. Shalvira had never been a soldier. She had been a prisoner, a pawn in a galactic game that didn't care about her. But now, she was something more. She had been freed by the humans, and they had shown her what it meant to fight for freedom. She had always thought that she had no place in this war, that her fate had already been sealed. But as she watched Reyes and his crew prepare for the next phase of their mission, something inside her stirred. She wasn't just a princess anymore. She was a fighter. She was a part of this crew. She wasn't just waiting for someone to save her. She was going to fight for her own future, for her own survival. She wasn't going to let the galaxy decide her fate. The humans had shown her how to take control, and now she was ready to do the same. As the Black Star continued its journey toward the hidden colony, Reyes worked tirelessly with his crew to prepare for the impending battle. They weren't just preparing to defend the colony. They were preparing to take the fight to the Krixa. They would hit them hard, strike when they least expected it, and show the galaxy that humans could not be crushed. The Krixa had underestimated them before, and now it was time to make them pay for it. Every member of the crew knew their role, and they moved with precision, each preparing for the conflict that was sure to come. The Black Star wasn't just a ship. It was their symbol of defiance, their weapon, and their sanctuary all in one. In the quiet moments before the battle, Shalvira found herself standing beside Reyes once again. He was looking out at the stars, his face thoughtful. She joined him, her voice quiet. "You know, I never thought I'd be here. I never thought I'd be part of something like this." Reyes turned to her, his gaze steady. "You're here because you have something worth fighting for. We all do. And together, we're going to make sure we keep it." Shalvira looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. She wasn't just another prisoner to be saved. She was part of a family now, and together, they would fight to the end. The tension in the air grew as they neared the colony. They knew the Krixa would be coming for them soon, and the final confrontation was inevitable. Shalvira felt a fire build within her as the ship prepared for what was to come. She wasn't just running anymore. She was fighting. The battle for freedom, for humanity's future, was about to begin, and she was ready. The Black Star and its crew were about to face their biggest challenge yet, but they would not back down. The fight for their lives, for Shalvira's future, and for the galaxy's freedom was just beginning, and they would not let the Krixa win. The final battle had arrived, and the Black Star was ready for it. As the ship neared the hidden colony, the crew could feel the weight of what was to come. They had no illusions. This wouldn't be easy. The Krixa, with their overwhelming numbers and brutal tactics, would stop at nothing to capture Shalvera. But the humans, led by Reyes, weren't backing down. They had made it this far, and they would fight to the last breath to ensure the princess's safety. Reyes, standing at the helm, was the picture of calm focus. He had been in countless battles, but this one felt different. This was about more than survival. This was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. Humanity would not be enslaved. Shalvera stood beside him, feeling the tension in the air. She had never imagined she would be in a situation like this, fighting for her life alongside these humans. But as the battle drew near, she felt a sense of purpose, a strength she had never known before. She wasn't the helpless princess she once was. She was a part of something far bigger now, a force of resistance against the tyranny of the galaxy's powerful warlords. The humans had shown her what it meant to fight, to stand up for what was right, and she was ready to do her part. The Krixa warship appeared on the horizon, its massive form filling the space in front of the colony. It was a terrifying sight, a symbol of the Krixa's power and their determination to crush any opposition. But the Black Star wasn't afraid. It was a ship of war equipped with the best technology and weapons humanity could muster, and the crew was just as formidable. The Iron Ghosts were ready, each of them taking their position with unwavering resolve. Every move they made was calculated, every strike aimed at bringing down their enemy. The battle began with a deafening roar. The Krixa warship opened fire, its weapons blasting toward the Black Star with unrelenting force. But the Black Star was fast, maneuvering through the space like a predator, dodging the enemy's shots and returning fire with deadly accuracy. Reyes barked commands, his voice sharp and full of authority, as he led the crew in a series of rapid attacks. Shalvera, standing by his side, watched in awe as the humans fought back. They weren't just defending themselves. They were fighting for a cause, for a future where they could stand free, unbroken by the hands of tyrants. The Krixa retaliated fiercely, launching wave after wave of attack. But the Black Star held strong, its shields absorbing the blows, its weapons tearing into the Krixa warship's defenses. It wasn't long before the enemy started to buckle under the pressure. The humans were relentless, their every move an act of defiance against the forces that had sought to dominate them. The tide of battle began to shift, and the Krixa warship, once so sure of its victory, now found itself on the defensive. Amid the chaos, Shalvera's heart pounded. She wasn't just watching anymore. She was part of this fight. She had been given a chance to make a difference, and she was going to take it. She joined the crew at their stations, helping where she could, her hands shaking but her resolve firm. This was her fight too. The battle wasn't just about saving her. It was about saving all of them, about proving that humanity could stand strong in the face of impossible odds. As the Black Star continued to engage the Krixa warship, Reyes' voice rang out across the comms. All units, prepare for the final strike. We take them down now, or we risk losing everything. His words were clear, but there was a fire in them. The battle was far from over, but the humans had one final move to make. A move that would either secure their victory or seal their fate. The Black Star's engines roared to life, and the ship shot forward, closing the distance between it and the Krixa warship. The final strike was about to begin. Shalvera's hands gripped the console in front of her, her heart racing. This was it, the moment that would define everything. The Black Star surged forward, its weapons firing in rapid succession. Each shot a reminder to the Krixa that they were no longer the masters of the galaxy. The Krixa warship, despite its advanced technology and firepower, couldn't withstand the onslaught. Piece by piece, it began to fall apart, the shields collapsing under the weight of the Black Star's attacks. With a final, earth-shattering explosion, the Krixa warship was destroyed. The Black Star had won. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had stood its ground, and in doing so, had shown that it was a force to be reckoned with. The Krixa had lost, and the humans had won. Shalvera stood beside Reyes, her heart swelling with pride and relief. The battle was over, but their fight was just beginning. The message had been sent. Humanity would not be ruled. As the Black Star sailed through the wreckage of the Krixa warship, Reyes turned to Shalvera, his face a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. "We did it," he said quietly. "But this is just the beginning. We have a long way to go." Shalvera nodded, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. She wasn't just a princess anymore. She was a warrior. And with the humans by her side, there was nothing they couldn't accomplish.